I'm pretty much capped out. So I have a waiting list on clients, right? And I have a group fitness class coming into town just a couple times a week. So am I satisfied with that? Or do I want to build this online platform and keep going? How far do I want to go with it? But the personal touch that personal training for me provides is what fills my bucket. Right. And that one-on-one and that vulnerability, and also like get the education piece and getting to serve people better. So I don't know. I'm kind of at a place now where I'm like, maybe I just stay put for a little bit and see how this goes. How far I want to take the other piece of that, maybe,
Sure.
I'm pretty much capped out unless they raise their prices.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Snod, It Rhymes with Odd, and you're tuning into the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today, we're bringing another amazing guest. We have Amy Boyd in the house.
What's
Amy,
up?
welcome
Hello.
to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Amy is a fitness trainer. She is now the owner of BA Fitness, not AB Fitness,
Yes,
BA
BA.
Fitness. And we're going to talk all things like personal training, kind of the business side of it. Amy and I have known each other for quite a while.
Yeah.
When I was first getting into the CrossFit space, you were like the first person I talked to when I was kind of shopping around local places. And that was kind of our first contact. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to talk about all things business and kind of my unique beginnings, I guess.
Sure. And I think it'll be an interesting story because, you're technically like starting your business like in the middle of your life. Like a lot of people start it early on. Some people start it later in life. So I think it'll be kind of an interesting conversation of like what you like the back knowledge you had to kind of cram to figure out like what have I missed, from this side, because your subject matter, but it's like now I got to learn this other stuff, which is a fun thing. So for the people that don't know who you are, I always say if you have a nosy Uber driver, like a 45-minute drive and they're just talking your ear off, how do you introduce yourself? Like what do you say, like who you are and what you do?
Which is funny you'd say it that way because I'm like the type of person that if I get in a car with somebody, instantly I know everything about their entire life story. People just like to talk to me. So let's see. I live in Polk City with my husband. I've got 3 kiddos. So my stepson's 22, my daughter is 18, and my other daughter is 16. We have a great big Vizsla at home. I am a full-time personal trainer now, which is new, which we'll talk about a little bit. So that's my only gig, which is a great gig. Big believer in Jesus. I like to volunteer a lot and help out through my church. That's kind of life right now. That fills up all the spots in my life.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. Well, that's awesome. And I think it'll be a fun conversation for sure. Because I think we could probably backtrack a little bit and we can kind of go back to your origin story and we can kind of fill the gaps as we go. But where'd you grow up? Like, what was your childhood like and where are you from originally?
Yeah, I grew up in West Des Moines, so I was a Valley High School grad.
Nice.
A lot of people don't like to admit that, but around Ankeny area, they don't like Valley so much.
Sure. Well, the sports rivalries and stuff.
And I played 4 sports at Valley.
Oh, wow.
Which is funny because I've learned now through fitness, like I'm a very fit person, but I'm really not athletic at all.
Sure.
That's different. Those are
But
different things.
Throw a ball and throw a wall ball are 2 different things,
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm very fit, but I'm not very athletic, but I sure tried hard at that in high school. So, 4-sport athlete, like
which was it A's. At that time? Was it a larger school? Was it a 4A?
Oh,
so that in itself is a feat just to participate in 4 because anymore, I mean, now being a parent on the other side, everyone specializes. It's just like 1, maybe 2 sports if they do a lot. So
yeah, my parents were at a lot of things all the time, which was awesome. But
sure.
Very busy.
What 4 sports?
So soccer and swimming. I was terrible at basketball, but I did it. And then I did track for a while too. So and some of them overlapped, but managed straight A's, pretty normal childhood growing up.
Any siblings?
Yes. Okay. So my sister's just like 15 months younger than me.
Okay.
So we were really close, but not close relationship-wise for quite a while until about college. And then my brother is 6 years younger. So he now lives close by too with my nieces, and that's nice.
Very good.
Yeah.
So where did you do the college route? What was kind of like post-grad when you were, because obviously you're an athlete, but did you want to pursue this as like a career path? What was that like for you?
That's a great question because it's kind of my origin story starts kind of there, if you will. So I was at state soccer my senior year. I stepped in a hole and my knee blew up. Like it didn't just like break. It like anything you could have torn, I tore. So I went to Iowa State on crutches and still seeing a PT like therapist. It was terrible. And so everything that I knew about like fitness and nutrition went down the drain because it was all tied to sports. And all of a sudden, all that was gone because my knee was so bad. So I went to Iowa State and studied elementary education. I always wanted to be a teacher. I love kids. I love being in front of a group. I don't get easily embarrassed. it just was a really good fit for where I was at. And then, so the fitness and nutrition and the sports side of me took a big dive. And I really just dug into studying how to be a teacher.
So was it elementary ed was your major? Or did you have any tie in at all with sports at all?
No, nothing. So elementary ed was my major. I did a minor in Spanish and kind of let all of that go for 4 years. So gained a ton of weight because nobody ever taught me, like, hey, practice is actually exercise, and maybe you need to do that actually in real life. Continue to eat like a college kid does, ramen noodles and meatball subs and all the crap. Put on a ton of weight, got really unhealthy, and towards the end of my junior year, I started to really freak out. Like, not only am I not fit anymore, but like I am way far on the other end of the spectrum, and then started to try to take care of myself right about then.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, at that time, like everyone's metabolism's so high, and there's so much going on. It's like grab and go, pizza, beer. There's like ice cream. Like, I mean, the amount of times my friends and I went out to eat, and it's never healthy stuff.
No,
let's
cheap.
get pizza, let's go get ice cream, or that's like the time when people don't really seem to care about their fitness. Like, I know when I've been into fitness most of my life as well, but that was when I was like trying to do meal planning and exercise, and it's like all your friends are like, what do you do? Like,
right.
Let's go to a party. Let's go get some pizza. Like, why do you care about this stuff? So that's an interesting time to get interested in fitness.
I think so. I think there was just such a huge, like, opposing part of my life where I was this 4-sport athlete, I was really fit looking and I felt really good. And then I went to college and all just kind of fell apart and I didn't feel good in my skin. So I started running because that was kind of like cheap, right? Like everybody can run. I don't know how to use weights. And a year to the date after I had weighed 188 pounds and felt miserable, I ran a marathon. So I'm also a person that's like, once I'm in, I'm all in. So I ate like tuna fish from a can, like all the cheap protein I could find, and ran every day until I put my miles up there and put forth a marathon effort a year later.
That's
Lost
awesome.
a bunch of weight and felt better. So
sure. What was the hardest part about that journey for you? Just like, was it the first run, like the couch to the pavement, or what was the first thing for you that was hardest?
I think it was just admitting that I was like no longer in shape, like I put on a big baggy t-shirt because I didn't want anybody to see my body, and I would think I ran a block the first time, felt like I was just going to hurl. It was horrible. So just to kind of go back to thinking about playing sports and being in all these practices and then all of a sudden being where I was at it was hard to face that, I think. Reality at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you run your marathon. At what point are you like, I'm into fitness now, or is this just like, that was my goal, and now I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing before?
Yeah, I'm a real all or nothing person. So when I dig into something, especially when I get like positive results, I'm like, oh yeah, we're digging. So I kept running and running. I did several marathons after that, just kept losing weight. And then not too long after I graduated from college, became a school teacher and all that, was when I found CrossFit. And that's when, like, the weight piece of it came in for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is fun. This is the athlete.
Was that, like, when you first got into CrossFit, that was probably towards the beginning of CrossFit, right? Because it's not an older sport. It's a newer, like, in the last decade or two, sport that's really blown up. What was that like for your first experience getting into that?
Yeah, so this would be about 2011, like, end of 2011. I was working for a chiropractor at the time, so this is kind of another piece of my story. He gave me money to build out a gym in the back of his practice because he was tired of people being overweight and that being the cause of why they were in there. So he's like, let's try to get people not overweight. So I built out a gym in the back of his practice, and then I was like, I don't really know a lot about weightlifting. Like, I'm learning as a personal trainer kind of what I want to do. So I went to a CrossFit gym and I was like, hey, teach me how to lift weights. And he was like, oh, hey, you're a personal trainer? Why don't you be a coach? I'm like, because I don't know anything about CrossFit. And it was so new. It was brand new.
What year was this?
2011.
Okay.
Yeah. So he put me in like a coach's class like within a week of being at this gym. And so then I was learning all of the things about CrossFit. But I went to like CrossFit L1 where you're supposed to learn like squat, snatch. And I'm like, what's a snatch? Like, I didn't know hardly anything about CrossFit at the time. So kind of got thrown into that world pretty quick.
Sure. Well, did you teach it all like after college, or did you get to the end of that and you're like, elementary ed isn't for me anymore? Yeah,
sorry, we kind of skipped through that too. So I taught immediately after graduate. I actually walked out of college with a job in Minnesota, of all places. That's where I student taught. So I did teach for 4 years, but within that 4 years, I had 2 babies that were 21 months apart, and the amount of money I was spending on childcare was almost equivalent to what I was bringing home, and I was never home. So it just made no sense as a new mom to try to be pumping at school and, picking them up from daycare and then not making any money doing it. So I actually ran an in-home daycare, and during that time got my personal training certifications during nap times or whenever free time I could find to study.
Sure.
Yeah.
How was it like, and this will tie in later on here, but what was that experience like for you trying to manage your fitness while being a new mom and working and all the stuff that goes on? Because I feel like that experience probably steered you where you are now.
It gives me so much empathy, and I think it's why I tend to draw in more moms. So I bought a double jogger because, again, I was a runner at the time. That was kind of where I was most comfortable, and I would plop the kids in the double jogger, and we would take off for a run. And because that way I could multitask. I was still momming, and then I was able to get some kind of fitness in. I bought like Tybo and Insanity DVD tapes and would take them to the basement whenever I could find time. But yeah, it was just finding those kind of little pockets of time or trying to multitask as a mom at the same time. Funny story. So I ran a 5K with my double jogger, and my 2-year-old at the time threw her blankie out right at the end, and I was going to win. I was going to win the 5K, and I had to go back to get the blankie because any mom knows you don't leave the blankie behind. And I ended up getting second place. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I did. We have a Bob stroller, and when we just had one, I took Roan on the Polk City 5K.
Yeah.
In the coldest day ever.
Oh, no.
And I was all bundled up. He was bundled up, but for whatever reason, he kept throwing his gloves off. And he just screaming the entire way. So I had headphones, and I just cranked the music up because he just going, the entire way down the street. And I'm like, if this 5K wasn't hard enough, I decided to bring my screaming kid with me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was a nightmare.
But that empathy that you're that's hard. Like, it's hard as a parent to be fit, especially when your kids are younger and they're really dependent. That's how I started workouts at work with Amy. So that's like the first time that I was like, I think I can walk out and do like a part-time business while my kids are in preschool. They both were in school at the time, so I had kindergarten and preschooler. So I'd taken this personal training, and I was like, I don't want to wipe butts for the rest of my life. God bless daycare providers, but it just was not my jam. So I'm going to go part-time into people's homes, and I'm going to start training them in their homes while I hold their infants or like watch their dogs or whatever it happens to be. And we'll use whatever equipment they happen to have or no equipment, but just make it work for them how I made it work for me. So that's where kind of personal training started for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about that process did you enjoy or not enjoy? Because obviously there's pros and cons, like going to someone's home, they might not have any equipment, or they're not like motivated, or their kids are freaking out or whatever. Like, what were those challenges like for you?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, too, I was brand new to the business, right? So you're not super confident in your abilities at this point. So I'm writing everything out like I'm a school teacher, like a script for every single client. And oftentimes, you know this from your workouts, like scripts don't work because it depends on what your body's doing at that time, if your kids are up from a nap or not. So I had to learn to be flexible. And I think I actually liked that part of the job because it taught me to think on my toes. It taught me to really read people, have conversations with them as they're warming up and like feel out where they're at and then learn to adjust on the fly based on that. What I didn't like about it is I was traveling, like I had a client in Ames, Iowa, so I was living in Ankeny at 4:30 a.m., right? But I took it because I needed the experience and the money, and I would train her in her apartment gym. But like that was wild. It was so early in the morning for me having kids that would be up in the middle of the night still. I also didn't like that I was meeting strangers like in coffee shops for consultations, and sometimes they were men, and then going back to their homes to train them. Like that started to feel a little ick, if you will, not safe. So it was kind of a broken business model. In some ways, it was great because it taught me a lot. But in other ways, the safety piece of it as female started to not make any sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're training part-time. You're still staying home with the kids, helping with that, or doing the in-home daycare.
Oh, yeah.
Did you end up leaving the fitness industry and doing something else? Or at what point did you decide to do full-time, like become a CrossFit instructor and kind of go down that whole route?
Yeah, everything in my life, it's just, you look back at it and you're like, oh, that happened for a reason. But it just kind of seemed at the time pretty sporadic and wild. So training people in their homes, chiropractor hires me because he's a daycare dad. So he hires me to build out his practice. Then I quit doing daycare because now that becomes a gig while I'm also training people on the side. So I always had this like personal training business off to the side as like a side gig, if you will, but it was never a full-time thing. And then I go to CrossFit to learn how to lift weights, and he's like, be a coach. So now I've got workouts at work with Amy, I've got CrossFit coaching, and then I've got working at the chiropractor's office, which eventually just involved to CrossFit coaching because I was getting more and more hours. Then I was like, I'm in Des Moines coaching CrossFit. I'd rather be closer to home. So then I started to kind of start coaching closer and closer and closer to home. And I still don't really know this part of my story, how this happened, but people wanted me to run their gyms at some point. And I think because I have this all or nothing personality and this ownership mentality to what I do, a job has never been a job to me. It's been about like really ensuring the process for people and the environment for people is really at the best it can be every time I'm in the building. And I think people probably saw that in me, and owners are like, hey, dang, like I don't have to do it all because she'll do it. And so that's where I started becoming a general manager of people's gyms with an elementary education background in daycare. And still, again, just keeping that like workouts that work with Amy on the side, and just doing some training now in people's gyms, right? So now I'm running their gym, and I'm also training people in their gym. So that's kind of how that all evolved, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of an interesting thing because, like, being in elementary ed, you have to be able to, like, manage chaos. And I feel like a gym is like that where people come in late. Like you said, the script doesn't work. I have this whole workout planned, and, like, half the people can't do the movements or whatever. It's like you have to be able to roll the punches, but then also have a schedule and know, hey, recess is at 1 or whatever. This class is done at 1. Like, you have to keep the train on the track, so to speak, and keep the chaos rolling.
So much of my elementary education background comes into play with everything that I do. But really, it's people reading, whether it's kids or whether it's adults. It's like knowing the people in the room and what fits them best for in the moment, right?
Sure.
So
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So then you end up, it was the last place you ended up was Ankeny, or North Ankeny CrossFit, now CrossFit Goldfinch. Yeah. What was that experience like? Because that was like your longest probably that you were managing a gym for. Mm-hmm. How long was that? Like a decade or?
No, I
5
think
years?
5. I think about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I walked into CrossFit Ankeny, it was kind of a unique situation. This is a fun story to tell. You can use it or not. But I knew my job at CrossFit 8035 was likely going to come to an end. The owners were going to kind of usurp my job and kind of take back ownership of their gym, mostly because I kind of started pricing myself out, if you will. Like I was doing so much and demanding money, within my contract. I knew that at some point that was going to not be feasible for them from a business standpoint. So I call Jeff Woody up, who at the time I knew a little bit in the industry, and I was like, hey, bud, love the location of where you're building this gym. Like, ideal. It's perfect. I don't really want to be your competitor, and this is like not a threat, but I'm in a place where I think I'm going to start a gym in Ankeny unless I can work with you, which would be great. Not for you necessarily, but like with you in more of a management position. And he was like silent for a little bit. And he's like, I don't think you're going to believe this, but like I'm at my end. I actually just prayed at church about this. And like I talked to Troy Peterson, and Troy Peterson's a good mutual friend of ours. And I guess he had said, if you could think of somebody to take over this business and to do it, who would it be? And one of the people he mentioned was you. And this was just a day ago. And then I call him up out of the blue, right?
Divine intervention.
Yeah, like,
that's
hey,
crazy.
This is Amy Boyd. Can I have a job? The next day, my husband and I sat in a booth across from Sean and Jeff at a local sports pub, and we signed paperwork, and I was in their gym shortly thereafter, learning the ropes and running their business. So that was an amazing step in a direction that got me close to home. My kids were at Centennial across the street. It just felt really, really good.
Sure. Well, and I think that's probably something that people that aren't in the industry don't know is like you can own a gym, but if you're operating it, that's a whole different thing. If you're coaching every class, if you're doing memberships, if you're taking care of accounting and marketing, whatever, it's exhausting to just be up, like you said, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there's classes till like 7, 8 at night. It's like when do you get away? So
they were on every seat on that bus. And I think they were ready for someone to take the driver's seat and for them to just be able to sit in a seat when they wanted to, I mean, I remember even walking in the first day, I think Jeff had like his laundry in there. I mean, like he was just living there pretty much. Yeah. So it was a blessing for everybody.
Sure. Well, and from the operational efficiency stuff, what are some things that you kind of did or like to hang your hat on throughout your career when you come in? If you're like, okay, I'm in charge, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing to make sure that or keeping as many people happy, or like what are some of those things that you do from as an operator?
Yeah, so retention was a huge piece of what I did. And again, I have no business background, right? I just really love to make sure people are having a good experience. So I had to learn how to like delve into the numbers side of the business, really dig into the software, and then study and create these like reports for the owners on a monthly basis. Like, here's where we're at in membership. Here's how many people have left. I followed up with them. Here's why they left. But at the same time, also tracking their budget. So it's an awkward thing to say, I know this is your baby, but give me your credit card. Like, we're not going to be buying basketball hoops anymore for the middle of the gym. We're going to save up for the things that we need. So, yeah, running the budget part of it, and then also just the numbers piece of it was new for me. But I knew it was a huge piece of relief I could give the owners if I was able to take control and just make some processes and procedures for not only the members, but for the staff that just made everything flow as easily as it could.
Sure.
So I think a lot of times, too, when owners get underwater, because rightfully so, like we said, you're just trying to run a business and put food on your table. Processes and procedures kind of start to take a backseat, or you just don't ever make them because you just always feel like you're just trying to reach the surface. So someone from the outside can come in and say, hey, we could make this a lot smoother. Like, for example, if a staff member needs to be gone, we could have a process and a procedure for who they report to and how they handle that. That then doesn't become a group text thread that 8 people maybe see or don't see, right? So, yeah, just making all that as smooth as I could make it.
Sure.
Was the goal.
Well, it's interesting too because you're getting that like business owner scratch, if you will, without taking on the risk of buying land, building a building, or biting off a 10-year lease on something where you're like, well, when the kids are all like, do we even want to live at near Anchor? I'm like trapped here for 10 years if I can't get away. It's like you can still kind of get that experience without taking all the risk yourself,
Yeah, there was no overhead for me. There was no risk. The only thing that's hard about that is when you have an ownership mentality and you want the best for the business, you ultimately don't have the last say. I am the hands and the feet, and I am on the ground in their business, but ultimately it's not my choice. And when you feel like you were kind of born to run your own business, sometimes that can be hard.
Right.
Because you don't always agree with decisions being made because you feel like you are on the ground all the time and you're putting the sweat equity into their business. And then you have to sit back and say, I don't agree, but it's ultimately not for me.
Sure.
So that was probably the only part of that was difficult.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because like you mentioned, the retention, there's so many things you can do behind the surface that just feel like it's just the place to be, right? For any gym, right? I think of gyms that I went to when I would go to big commercial gyms in Des Moines just because it was inexpensive and close to where I worked at the time. And there's zero interaction. For me, that was what pushed me to explore a CrossFit option for a time was because I think it was like 8 years that I worked out at a gym. I didn't know anyone that worked there. I didn't talk to anyone there. I'd work at my desk with my headphones on all day. I'd go to the gym, work out with my headphones on. I'd go home. My wife, or my girlfriend at the time, now wife, didn't get home till 10 o'clock at night, so I effectively didn't talk to anybody for like 12 hours straight. And I'm like, this sucks, and I'm a social person, so I'm like, I need something different. So I think it's a testament to a boutique fitness model where you can have that interpersonal connection and things like that. What are some of the things that you guys did or continue to do with doing one-on-one now to make sure that people aren't just a number? It's like that connection, that community piece between people.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the first things I did, and this follows through with BA Fitness as well, but I don't make people sign a contract for a certain period of time because I feel like as a business owner, like if you're not earning their business month after month, they shouldn't be contracted out to pay for 5 months if I'm not doing a good job on my end. So I should have to earn your business every single month. And I follow that through with my clients too. I don't make them buy these giant packages clear out. I actually don't allow them to buy more than 30 sessions at a time. Just for that reason, like I want them to have that assuredness that I'm going to keep giving them the best that I can and the best experience that they can get. And I know this sounds really stupid, but this is a big one for me. Like a clean business, when you're in the fitness industry, whether it's at BA Fitness or whether it was at the gym, like it mattered a lot to me. So I think when people pay that monthly fee, like that should be part of their experience. Like they should have a clean area with clean equipment that works well. So Bart and I are constantly, my husband and I in BA Fitness, we're upgrading equipment. We're making sure it's clean, it's usable. And it sounds simple, but if you've ever had an experience at a gym where that's not been present, you know how important that piece of it is too. And then I think a really big piece of it is just knowing people beyond their first name. I always try to use people's name twice when they attend a class, right when they walk in the door, and then make sure I said it at least one other time. But also knowing a little bit about their families, like just using like warm-up times and dead times in personal training. I would say right now I have 28 clients at BA Fitness, and very confident to say they're all like family to me. I've been to funerals with my clients. I've been to weddings with my clients. Like I've been through pretty much every hard thing they've ever been through, and all the good stuff too. So graduation parties and things. But yeah, just really getting involved with people and making them feel like they're not just a number in a class, but they're actually people that matter to you, because they do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's such a great tie-in with their life, because usually if they put on a bunch of weight, it's not just because they chose that. If you understand their story a little bit, you'll know why. Like you said, if you're like yourself, you're a busy mom and you're running around, it's like you don't have time for it or whatever,
So true.
Then you can kind of not really empathize, but understand from their perspective, like where they're coming from or whatever. But I also feel like then you understand their motivation behind it, where it's like, I'm doing this for whatever. And a lot of times it's not for themselves, right? It's other people, their family, or to do this thing that they wanted to do for years. What's that like, tapping into kind of like motivation factors or things that get people like wanting to keep pushing when things get hard?
You don't often, so I do consults, right? So I do like a 20-minute free consult with people. You don't often get deep with somebody in 20 minutes because I'm a stranger to you. And I'm not going to be vulnerable in front of you when I know that you're probably also going to put me through burpees and terrible workouts, right? Like that's vulnerable enough. So it usually takes like a good 4 or 5 sessions for me really to start to get to know people's true colors, right? Maybe they swear for the first time when they're lifting, or they start to talk like a little bit about their family life. And you kind of get to know a little bit more about them. And then again, like you said, that starts to lead into their whys. Like, what are they really here for? It's not really lose 20 pounds, but why did they put on those 20 pounds, and what trauma or whatever's happening in their life. So yeah, a lot of that comes out. But then I have found, this has been, almost 14 years of being a personal trainer now. Those are my loopholes sometimes to get educated real quick, right? So I had a client that was a domestic abuse survivor, and that's not something that I was familiar with as far as how to train them in a way that made them feel safe and comfortable. So I quickly learned how to be a trauma certified personal trainer. So trauma-informed personal training is a thing, like trauma-informed hairdressers. But you think about that, like people who've been through severe, especially physical trauma, like going to a dentist, that's terrifying. So being a personal trainer, like I needed to create a space and environment for her that was conducive. And then that's helped now with veterans that I've trained or other people that have PTSD or any kind of trauma. So in getting to know people and their backgrounds and their stories, when they feel like they can be vulnerable and open with me, then I'm saying, okay, now I need to learn how to handle X, Y, and Z, and I need to be better educated. So the teacher in me loves that, because I'm like, okay, what can I learn next? How can I better serve this group? So
I love it. I love it. So when we were kind of talking about the hardships and things like that, since your marathon running days, what are some of the highlights athletically that you've done to stay kind of a practitioner of your knowledge, not just you think of like the Andy Reid coach, where like he probably couldn't run a mile, but he can tell the most elite athletes in the world what to do for football. Like, how have you kind of stayed to be a practitioner of it?
Well, remember where I started. So I'm not athletic, but I've grown to be really fit, right? So when I started in CrossFit, I was like, oh, I'm kind of good at this. But it wasn't super athletic stuff. It was fitness stuff. So I really delved into just like getting to know like the movements a little bit better. And then when Bart, my now husband, was a coach of mine for a while, he was the first person that actually coached me. Because remember, I had like a week before I was thrown into how to coach CrossFit classes. And I was like, wait, I need coached. So nobody ever really coached me. And he started coaching me in 2012. And I got really good. Like, not to lack humility here, but like for females at that time in CrossFit, I was towards the top. And just
regionally, or kind of like in the whole country?
I mean, regionally for sure. But when we started to stack up in the CrossFit Open in 2013, one of my performances was top 10 in the world. Brooke Wells was behind me that year, but she just started CrossFit, but we won't talk about that.
Sure.
It still counts. It still counts.
For people that don't know, Brooke is like one of the top 5 or 10 like female competitors that I know who she is, and I'm not even like a CrossFit nut either too.
Yeah,
so
I did beat her in one workout. I have proof.
There you go.
So that was really
I took
exciting.
a picture with her.
Yeah. It was so exciting. Again, she was a baby in CrossFit, but technically so was I. Anyway, but I got to go to CrossFit regionals, and that was really cool to qualify as part of a team because of the scores in the open, like a worldwide competition. So that was kind of the pinnacle. I got to do that 3 different times and compete alongside people like Rich Froning, like the really, really, really good CrossFitters who go to the games and win all the time. So that was neat. And it wrecked my body a little bit, but it also provided me with my now husband. You know, CrossFit has and just lifelong friends and just great memories of like the pinnacle of my fitness. You know, being able to, at one point I snatched 155 pounds for 4 in a workout. Like, never going to do that again, but just super cool to be at that point. So now I still dabble in CrossFit quite a bit, but I'll be 44 in a month, which is wild. And I did do some damage to my body competing all those years, taking my fitness to those extremes. So, you know, I had some shoulder surgery, little knee surgery, all the things to kind of
cross your CrossFit bucket list off. Knee surgery, shoulder surgery.
Yeah. So now I would say because I rode my fitness so high, the great part about being 44 is my fitness might be on a slight decline because of my age and just taking it down a notch. But because it was so high, like my decline is still higher than most for my age. And that's great because I can still inspire my clients with, you know, the weights that I can lift and my fitness level. And I still really enjoy being able to go in there and every once in a while, you know, pick on a 30-year-old or 20-year-old or something.
Sure.
Yeah. So I still love it.
Well, and what's been like, you mentioned kind of doing these crazy workouts. Does anything stick out to you as like the hardest thing you've ever done physically? Like that you look back and you're like, that was absolutely like the complete breaking point for me physically, that I don't know if I could ever do that again, or that was the hardest thing I've ever done?
Yeah, we did a Go Ruck. Bart and I did, and this was when he was just my CrossFit coach, so it was a long time ago, but it was like 24 hours. We had a backpack full of bricks, and the first thing they had us do was bear crawl backwards up the stairs of the Capitol, which if you've ever been out there, those are gnarly stairs to go up forward facing.
To not even see where you're going either. Or are you like looking?
It's pitch dark. It's pitch dark.
Oh my.
Yeah, and it was cold. It was like October. And then the next thing they did, they had us run and we went out into the water like waist deep. So then for the next like 23 hours, you're frozen from the waist down. And like the things we had to do on that, we had to pick up a tree out of the woods that was thousands and thousands of pounds, like 24 of us. Try to carry it a mile. We couldn't. Everybody was all cut up, bleeding. It was wild. And we paid to do that. I don't even know. But I remember at one point he told us we were done, and we thought we were done, and then we were not done. He was just messing with us, and I broke down like, I can't. This is the worst thing I've ever done. So that was really, really a really big challenge. And I do think like the CrossFit Open, there was a year where I was probably at my peak of fitness in 2017. And a workout came up that I knew I could get to the last weight in the ladder, and none of the other females could. And I knew that score mattered a lot. We videoed it, and CrossFit HQ came back and said, hey, we need one of your members to show video proof of one of their workouts. Happens to be me, happens to be that workout. And my double unders at the time were out of view of the camera. So I had to redo that workout and try to get to that last weight, which was extremely challenging to do. And I had like a 24-hour window to do it and prove. I did that workout 4 times.
Oh my God.
4 times. And finally got to the last bar. And I mean, the amount of double unders that I did and the amount of heavy cleans I did is not safe. Couldn't move for a couple days. Turn in the video, finally explain what happened. And they were like, oh, if you would have just turned in the other one, we probably would have been fine. So put myself through that for nothing. But that was a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. Yeah. Probably why I ended up with surgery.
Sure. Well, when it comes to those like breaking points and those the physical limits that you can push your body through, like a lot of people wouldn't even go that far. Like, I can't run that far. I'm like, have you ever even tried to run until you can't? Like, you know, some of those types of questions that you have to put yourself through. What did you learn about yourself through some of these like really hard physical challenges that just completely push you to the brink?
Yeah, I'm mentally tough, and I have tried to instill that in my children, that there is something that you can tap into mentally that can take over sometimes when your body's not able to, and that, you know, in sports or when things are hard in life, it doesn't matter which one it is, in the gym or in life, like you can tap into something within yourself that can pull you through even things that don't seem possible. And I know that I pushed myself as an athlete, you know, through CrossFit, especially in the pinnacle of my career. Like, I really pushed myself to places where most people wouldn't go because mentally I was able to do that and get through that and go through that. So yeah, I think I just learned how mentally tough I really am. You know, I think when I had my 2 babes without meds, like labor without medication, it seems pretty tough. But there's points in fitness where I was like, this is kind of the same thing. This is feeling a lot the same thing. So
right. You're like, in labor, my body sends like pain-killing chemicals to my brain to help. Like this, there's no chemicals coming to my brain. I need a shot of painkillers or something.
And most people would call that insane, right? Or like taking it way too far. But when you are really mentally tough, sometimes there's a lot of satisfaction in trying to see how mentally tough you are. And I think I found a lot of enjoyment in like trying to tap into that and see how far I could take it.
Sure. There's definitely different types of people. Like we had a guy on, Farouk Yarabovich. His handle at the time on Instagram is the Thumbtack Runner, and he runs with thumbtacks in his shoes to callus his feet.
Wow.
Does 100-mile races. He's like, I think he was 19 at the time. He's probably 21 now. Guy from Des Moines here.
Okay.
But yeah, similar thing. Like I had a lot of people ask me like, is this dude like mentally ill? Like, why would he do this voluntarily? And it's that to that point, it's some people like are just, if you're a gambler, you're like addicted to the rush of it. If you're a adrenaline junkie, it's like there's a special kind of piece of that is like when you get a runner's high, but it's from exercise that you're just like pushing your body to the complete limit that it can do.
Yeah.
And it's like a challenge internally and no one's watching, like that type of thing. In your experience, you mentioned the hardest things you've done physically. Would those also have been the most hard, like mental challenges you've had, or have there been other things that have pushed you to the brink where the things that you've done from workouts and stuff, you had to kind of pull that same mindset and apply it to something else?
Oh, yeah. I mean, raising teenagers, friend, I'm sorry to tell you this because I know your kids aren't there yet, but raising kids in the world that we're in and just teenagers, period, is mentally exhausting, you know, and they're great kids. Don't get me wrong. They're amazing kids, but yeah, that is the hardest thing I've ever done. And there are often times when I'm tapping into those pieces, like just trying to push through the day and be the best that I can be for my kids, even though sometimes that feels very unappreciated. But yeah, being a mom, like it's not for the weak.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've had conversations offline about this stuff, but where society is today, I know you've talked about your faith is a big piece of this, but also like having a very clear goal as a parent of like, I want to raise you to be a resilient human being that has character, that will stand for something, that won't break the second you're stressed about anything. Like, what's that challenge been like for you now? Seeing, you mentioned your oldest is in college now. Now the other 2 are coming up there. What's that experience been like, that like all of the fruit of your labor is about to like leave the nest and like life is about to put them through the ringer just like everybody else?
That's what's scary. Like when your kids are little, you're like, don't touch the stove. And it's such a clear directive and it's obvious why, right? Because they're going to get hurt. But like when they're older, it's like, okay, drive your car across the state and hope you make it, you know? So that the life things and the decisions they start making have huge ramifications, and your control of the outcome of those things becomes pretty unclear. At times you just don't have that control. So really for me, it's like just continuing to speak wisdom into my kids, being there for them. I think there's several times I could point to where if we didn't have open line of communication, if they were scared of me or nervous how I would judge them, we would not have talked and it would have gone south pretty quick. So having an open line of communication with them is a great thing, but it's also scary because sometimes they tell you things and you're like, oh, Lord in heaven, here we go. But yeah, just being open and honest and imparting wisdom, and then I just pray and let go because you've done your job and you just kind of let them start making their own choices, you know? And then you're there when they don't make the right ones.
Sure. I love it. No, that's great. Great piece there. You'd mentioned also this faith journey. I think this ties in with your journey through business and fitness and all the different things. Talk to me about kind of how that's been for you. Did you grow up in a religious household? Did that impact kind of how you landed where you are today and that type of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I grew up Lutheran, and my mom was an adult ministry coordinator, director. My dad was really involved in the church. So I always had the example of my parents being leaders, which was helpful. And I know that that's where my leadership mentality came from. So yeah, I grew up in the church, did the choir thing, all of that. I think there's video somewhere of me being Jonah in a play. Singing, if you will, okay, 4th grade. But then as I got into college, I think I started to rely a little bit more on my own strength, you know, as a lot of us do, started to kind of stray a little bit in my faith and just try to have fun and do me. And then that quickly comes crashing down, as most people find that when you try to rely on yourself, like that only gets you so far. And then really started to find my faith again more as a parent and just dig into that piece of it. And now with my husband, we've gotten a small group going that's really great at our church. So that's been really life-giving. Just gotten really involved in the church. But then also, because I was able to let go of that Goldfinch job and just focus on BA Fitness, and which is a big reason why I did it, I am helping run Faith RX, which we actually get to go tonight downtown Des Moines and feed a bunch of kids at a gym. But as part of Faith RX, once a month we meet in different gyms. We talk about Jesus, we work out, we get to know a lot of people, and then we do a lot of volunteering in the community. So that's been a really life-giving thing to get to be a part of now that my schedule isn't quite so crazy with a full-time, part-time job.
Sure,
at the same time.
Well, I have two friends of mine that are very into fitness and very into religion that I'll have to share with you because they would, and they're in Ankeny too because they would both love, and they're both transplants. I should probably connect them as friends because they're like the same person. So I'll connect them with you.
That would be amazing.
That'd be cool to kind of spread the community a little bit. In terms of we've kind of brought it all to a spearhead here. We've danced around it. The going off on your own to do your business full time. Walk me through the path that you kind of came to that realization of, I should do this, because I went through this with my wife, Paige. She's a year into her business, and it's one of those things like the writing's on the wall. You know what you need to do or want to do, but it's like terrifying all at the same time. What was that like for you?
That's so well said. Yeah, I think God told me a long time, and he was speaking to me a long time before I actually let go of that job. I was fearful of letting go of a full-time salary. Just to be honest with you, my husband has an amazing job, and we would have been fine. But I think fine is still scary, right? And so I was
you don't strike me as a person that just wants to be fine in life, or just like, ah.
That might be a character trait. That's probably not my best trait, though. Being content is not a bad thing, right? But yeah, I think God had been telling me a long time to let go of that job, and mainly because I was turning down like volunteer positions and things that fed my soul and things that were part of my faith because I was too busy. I mean, and I wanted to be a mom too, and my kids were at pivotal ages, as teenagers. So finally, after Bart was like, let's go. Like, you can do, you can do this. I talked to the owners of Goldfinch. They were more than understanding. They were amazing at accepting not only that I was resigning from a job of running their gym, but they were like, hey, anytime you want to train here, we're here. If this job doesn't work out, like, we can be a safety net. We're still here. Like, just incredible about it, which also was really reassuring that I was making the right decision. My goal was to retain 20 clients within that first month, knowing that I was at like 14 or 15 part-time. And now I'm, at 28 solid. This was just 5 months ago with a waiting list, and it's just blown up, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that's the biggest scary thing is the initial, like, you want the instant validation of like, am I doing the right thing? Because if I do this and then no one comes on, or they're like, never mind. And you're like, I think that's kind of the...
So vulnerable, right? Yeah, and it feels like a reflection of you personally, like how your business is doing, because it is all you. But if you think about through my story, like I was always running other people's businesses. Even as a daycare provider, I was running my own business. I was ready for the final decision to come down to me. Like, I was ready to stop asking permission to make moves within people's business and like get to do that on my own.
Sure.
Yeah.
As you went off on your own, what was the way that you kind of structured it? Because you didn't go bite off a 5 or 10 year lease at a space and build your own gym or something. Like, what is that like for you, and how have you structured the business now?
So Bart and I have slowly added pieces to our home gym over a long period of time. So it's a full gym. So we use about a stall and a half of our garage. It's fully heated. And we kick the garage door open in the summer. So that piece was already there. And I was already training some clients within my home. So then I just graciously asked my clients that were meeting me at the gym if they could meet me at my home, and just try to slowly transition them all over into my garage gym. So now all but one of my 28 clients meets within my home, which is amazing, because then it's like I get up, I have a quick cup of coffee, I go out, like, do my job, come in, get breakfast started, whatever, for everybody else. So it's allowed me a lot of flexibility. And I just walk out my garage door and they're ready for me.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Because do you ever have like dreams or aspirations to have your own gym as well?
No.
You like the smaller, intimate setting?
We have. I think being 44, like you'd mentioned, like I'm in the middle of my life right now. Being married to a facility and all the responsibilities that would come with that just don't make a lot of sense. So I've got my older daughter is playing golf at Augustana, and that's in South Dakota, but she plays all over the place. So I want to go see her play. And my youngest daughter is possibly going to run track in college. Like, I want to go see her run, or just want to be able to, the freedom to see my family. And I think a lot of ownership is being married to your business. Yeah. And like the facility, if you will, like having to be there and be present. So that this is working and I get to be with my family. So I think this is just going to be the way it's going to be.
Exciting. Yeah. I know the space on the square, One Rep Fitness went out of business.
I saw that.
And they were looking to sell or like give the lease to someone else and just do turnkey. Like, here's the whole space as is. But I think they had somebody offer and they were in negotiations and it fell apart because I'm always looking for space for my business or Paige's business or a third business that we've talked about opening as well. So I'm like in talks with them, and then I'm like, oh, if it's another fitness option. But I think since Anytime came to town, they kind of just fell apart because there was another game in town, So
well, I'm not your competition, just so you know.
Sure.
I'm not looking for a
Right.
space. It's all yours.
I was going to say, like, it's an interesting thing though, because like you said, when you go from personal trainer over to gym owner, it's a different challenge. And then, I mean, we just had Jarrett Stodd on, who owns Flex Factory in Urbandale.
Sure.
Amazing success they've had. He was sharing with me off mic the revenue they were doing per month and just how much excitement they've had around their gym. They have 1,200 members. They've been open for 7 months.
Wow, good for them.
And they're opening a second location in Sioux Falls, and they're opening number 3 and 4 next year. That just exploded.
Yeah.
But they've done their model where they looked at all boutique fitness options, training options, and then commercial gyms, and they're like, how can we get the best of all these worlds where there's little to no staff, it's 24/7. You have a huge like open space that you can use, like anything you'd want in the gym, but it's self-serve.
Yeah.
And just give people what they want and step back. So
Good for them.
there's definitely pros and cons to that, because like there's people like me that go to a place like that for a long time and it doesn't fulfill that social bucket. But if you're running boutique fitness, you can only cap your classes at 25. There's only so much money you can make, and then you just have to be happy with whatever profit you have at the end of the month. So there's pros and cons there.
Yeah, there's so many facets to the fitness community. And my struggle now is like, I'm pretty much capped out. So I have a waiting list on clients, right? And I have a group fitness class coming into town just a couple times a week. So am I satisfied with that? Or do I want to build this online platform and keep going? How far do I want to go with it? But the personal touch that personal training for me provides is what fills my bucket. Right. And that one-on-one and that vulnerability, and also like get the education piece and getting to serve people better. So I don't know. I'm kind of at a place now where I'm like, maybe I just stay put for a little bit and see how this goes. How far I want to take the other piece of that, maybe,
Sure.
I'm pretty much capped out unless they raise my prices.
Sure. And that's the challenge with any kind of one-on-one service, whether it's consulting or coaching or anything like that. It's like time is the limit there, you know?
Yep.
Even for a lawyer, like we had a lawyer on yesterday, and she billed in 6-minute increments because it's 1/10 of an hour every.
Okay.
So when you're through the whole, like as an associate, like you live your life by 6-minute increments. So it just changes how you operate, where if you're like a salaried employee, you're like, oh, it's almost 5 o'clock. You're like, 6 minutes.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Unique. Yeah.
But I think it is a challenge though, because your first year in business, what do you think was like the biggest challenge or the biggest hurdle that you had to experience? Because you know the industry, but in terms of understanding business and learning that stuff, since you didn't have a formalized education, and what were the things you were playing catch up with those first couple months?
Well, I have the advantage of having a husband that works in the finance industry at John Deere. So he has a business knowledge that I didn't have. So I leaned a lot on that for like getting everything set up, LLC and all of that, because that was foreign to me. So I kind of just delegated that. See, the B in BA Fitness is Bart, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah, it can
Bart,
mean
take
lots
care
of
of
things, but yeah, that was his half of the business. So that was helpful, just make sure legally we were all set, ready to go. But so far, like knock on wood, but challenges-wise, like the clients are coming, everything's full. I feel like educational-wise, I just got my nutrition certification, so like I'm still keeping the ball rolling there. Like it just feel like it's continued to be blessed, and it just continues to kind of roll. So maybe my challenge hasn't come yet. I'm sure it might, but right now it just kind of is rolling along.
Sure. Well, and I think it's an interesting place to be, because as you mentioned, you could be, I don't have enough clients, or now in your case, I have too many and I don't know where to put them or send them or whatever. It's like, how do you serve as many people as you can and give different options? Because have you considered doing like small group classes as well, where like maybe the waiting list, they can only come for 1 hour of the day, and there's like 10 of them, and then it's a group class instead of one-on-one, or what are the other things have you kind of kicked around as like solutions for these people?
Yeah, like we do some partner sessions. So I have like husband and wife or best friends that work out together. My space isn't ginormous in the gym. So like I would say most like 4. So I have offered that option for people. I think the Polk City group fitness class that I'm going to run is like a great option for me, like to get my coach vibes out there, get to know more people in the community. And then there's my network for when maybe things do take a dive with clients. Now everybody's kind of heard of my name. They've seen me. They've experienced my style. And then just doing a lot of like touching base with businesses that would be good references both ways. So like a physical therapist that I know is doing a great job. We exchange business cards and we're kind of working together, and like chiropractors. So people within the field of health, just getting those connections built. So I do have a backbone there in case my clientele starts to dip for some reason that I can draw from to get kind of more of a base built up.
Sure.
So,
well, and even my first thought is for that fitness class, like when they're all in there, like if you want to go deeper, we have this online community or what you can upsell.
Or nutrition coaching now is something I offer a la carte. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, I can kind of go that way with it.
Because that one, I mean, you can scale that up as well. Like I know Jarrett, who is on his fiance does online coaching, nutrition coaching. They're both like super. I think he has 20 or 12.8 million TikTok followers,
wow.
and his fiance has like 1 million as well, and. All that exposure, you have to have something you can offer. And
yeah.
I think she capped out at like 70 online clients, but it's like, okay, there's some for weight loss, some for muscle training, some customization, but a lot of times just you have a spreadsheet, you can tweak it. They just want to know what foods, what quantities for me, for my kind of goals that way. So
Yep. And so that's a good downsell, or if you will, like a good gateway into personal training too, because now that I'm eating better, now that I want more exercise and things to go with that. So
sure. No, I love it.
Yeah.
We'll take a pause. We'll do the lightning round now. So
okay.
Dun, dun, dun. I kind of briefed you a little bit earlier. Random questions. You don't. If they're lightning round, but you can, if you need to go longer than a quick answer, you can. There's no.
I'll do my best.
There's no rules here. We're just making this up. So
okay.
Okay. So if you are coaching someone, I would like to know the scaled option and the RX Plus option for these following exercises. Okay?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, chest to bar. So what's the scaled option of chest to bar?
Pull up.
Okay, and then the RX Plus version of that.
Probably a bar muscle up.
There you go. Ding, ding. We got a first winner here. Next one is, you didn't even know these questions at all.
No.
I'm just dropping them on you. Handstand push-up. So the scaled and the RX Plus version of that.
Pike push-up. And then a strict handstand push-up.
Ding, ding.
To kipping.
Yep, you got it. And then the last one, this one's kind of a random. I'm not sure. I'm curious to know what you'll say. A Turkish get-up.
Yeah.
What's a scaled version and a RX Plus version of a Turkish get-up?
You can do a Turkish sit-up. So just the first half of the movement instead of coming all the way up, which is ideal for people that maybe can't get out of a lunge very well.
Okay.
Or you could also just use no weight, which is nice. And then a scaled up version, maybe use a barbell or like an odd object.
Okay. Barbell would be crazy, though.
It is crazy. It's so much harder.
Yeah. Or like an odd object, like put a human, like if you have a small person in class, like a 100-pound girl or something, hold them up or something.
You can YouTube like dudes doing it with their wives.
Oh, that would be hard. I can hardly do it with a freaking kettlebell. It's like 40-pound kettlebell. So
RX plus.
Yeah, plus. That's great. Okay, you got through the first question.
Okay.
You warmed up now?
Okay, I'm warmed up.
There you go.
Good.
We had Abby Ryland on a couple weeks ago, and I asked her this question, and I think it'll be an interesting one. The CrossFit Games is a huge event. They have payouts for first place, cash prize for men and women. They get the same amount of money, which is pretty cool. What is that amount of money for first prize they paid out last year or this year in 2024?
I have no idea.
Do you have a guess maybe on like how much? Because do you know who won? First place for the women and for the men?
Tia didn't win this one. Mm-hmm. You know what's funny is now that I'm out of that competitive world, it's kind of like you worked at McDonald's for a lot of years and now you don't eat French fries. I kind of didn't pay much attention to it.
Sure.
What would be a good guess? $60,000?
Way higher.
Way higher.
Yeah.
Like $500,000.
Lower.
Okay. They've got to be getting all these deals too, in shoes and clothes and blah blah blah. But this is just the payout for first place.
Just the payout from the games.
300.
Yeah, 315,000.
Wow.
And the men and the women get the same amount, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Only sport in the world that does that. So, because the viewership's obviously they're there for all of it. So
that's wild. Yeah, I had no idea. I know they win for like first place in an event too. They win some money, right? Like first, second, third place. Within events.
I know. Like I was in the bodybuilding world for a long time. Shot with a lot of pro bodybuilders, and if you win the Olympia, it's like $100,000 cash. But to your point, they make all their money from sponsorships and brand deals and other things, or their own business. I've never paid
attention to that. That's funny.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay. Your go-to lunch that is like a healthier lunch that you like if you're on the run or you're just like, I don't know what to eat. What's your go-to lunch?
So I literally just ate it on the way here because I had no time. So I take a Tupperware and I put no nitrate lunch meat in there.
Okay.
No nitrates. Don't do that.
Okay.
And then I throw...
What kind of lunch meat? Is it ham or turkey?
Turkey, usually, yeah. And then I throw carrots and then I throw cherry tomatoes. And then usually like some grapes or berries, and I just throw it all in a Tupperware and just on the way here.
Is the carrots even baked?
No, just raw carrots.
Oh wow! So you're like getting like a in the middle of your soup.
No, like I just like I'll eat the meat and then I'll eat some of the I eat it separate, but I just throw it all in one Tupperware because it's just easier. It's probably why your dog liked me when I came in.
Sure.
It smelled like turkey.
Sure, that's great. That's great. I love it. I know for me, like I always do the same lunch every day. It's like. Chicken, rice, cottage cheese, avocado. Oh, there's my dog.
Yeah,
Lily.
We talked about turkey.
And then I'll do a hot sauce. So that's my one variable I move. And lately it's been Lola's hot sauce. They're out of West Des Moines.
Oh yeah.
No soda, like very low sodium because they make it all from peppers. There's no like preservatives. There's no like because most hot sauce is like 700 milligrams per serving or something. This has like 5.
You're such a bodybuilder. Like I eat the same thing every day, and then you know how much sodium's in what you're eating.
Yeah. Well, then I start feeling like you're having not to go TMI, but it's like you can tell in your urine. It's like you're dehydrated
and thirsty all the time.
Yeah, or too much sodium in your body. You like don't sweat it nearly as much because I sweat so much. So it's like. Yeah, that's been kind of my go-to for the lunch side, but I like hearing what other people do because that's good to know.
Anything quick.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, the last one, I got to tap in the phone here. We're talking about obesity rates.
Yeah.
I know you probably know your stuff on this, so we're going to quiz you. First off, I want to know obesity rate by state. We're going to talk about this. Based on a poll from 2023, what is the most obese state in the country based on percentage? Like what percentage has that?
It's got to be South, like Alabama.
It's on the list. That's number 3.
Yeah, it's got to be down in that area.
So, any other guesses for the first one threw me. I'm not for sure.
The first state did?
Mm-hmm. The number 1 fattest state in the country.
It's not in the South?
Kind of.
I don't know. Kentucky?
Nope, that's on the list.
Yeah.
It's West Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that does throw me off.
41.5% of adults in West Virginia are categorized as obese. I always heard Mississippi, which is number 2.
Sure, that makes sense.
So they're 40.5% obese. Could you imagine half the state?
I can't imagine. Yeah.
Every other person is so unhealthy that they're obese. It's just kind of nuts.
Yeah.
We had Louisiana, Alabama, and some other ones, but Alabama was 32 or 39. But I think they've been number 1 so long. They have like state initiatives where they're like, they're putting Michelle Obama in the school system, like stop eating that type of stuff.
Oh, man. It's just so embedded in that culture, just all that fried food, and even the drinks are like high sugar. And
I know. Have you ever traveled like abroad to other countries? Where have you gone before? Spain.
Yeah.
And it's crazy when you go to Europe because no one's obese there.
Nobody's overweight.
Yeah. I did a study abroad trip where we did open air markets, so it's like where people get their food and their supplies. They don't have chain stores there.
Yeah.
So if you want bread, you go to the baker. You want whatever lunch meat, you go to the butcher, whatever. I know people that have gone to Italy and eaten like nothing but like pasta and pizza, and they like lose weight because it's all like fresh meat.
Right. It's just
and you walk everywhere. So.
And you walk everywhere. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's just such a cultural swing. Even the stress level seems lower. Like there's more of a focus on family and rest and more of a balance.
I know we were in Amsterdam. I did study abroad. We were in Amsterdam, London, and Paris, 5 days in each city. In Amsterdam, it kind of threw me because everyone there is like they take a siesta in the afternoon. Like you go get tea with your friend or your coworker, and then like they go home at 5, and then they come home or come back to work at like 7 or 8, work a couple more hours, come back. But it's very like there's just no like rush, which I think is good. But also like there's a reason why America's like the number 1 performing country like economically because like we're all trying to get stuff done. I just felt like it was a good place to like retire and chill. But I'm
Yeah.
like, there are way too many like 20 or 30-year-olds that just don't have any drive to do anything
You're
in
like,
life.
I'm way too American for this.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't do it. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so on the adverse of that,
Yeah.
what do you think, which state do you think has the lowest obesity rate?
Ooh, it's got to be like crunchy granola places like Oregon or maybe like, well, California is so big. It's probably not California.
It's not California.
No.
They're not even top 3 anymore.
Is Oregon, though, in there?
No,
I feel like
it's-
they're so crunchy granola. Colorado?
It's Colorado.
Colorado, yeah.
Yep, they have, I don't have an exact number. It's under 20%.
Because they're so recreational in Colorado, too.
Yeah, everybody's out hiking and doing stuff.
They're all out smoking weed and hiking.
Exactly. But then you think they get the munchies and they
Yeah.
put on the weight, but they're running
Hiking
it
it
off.
off.
Any idea who number 2 is?
I don't want to give you too much dead time. I'm trying to think.
It's not California. You mentioned that. It's not California.
Is it further to the west, though?
Very west. Yep.
Like Nevada area?
Even further.
I don't know what.
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Oh, Hawaii. Oh, gosh.
24%.
I don't even think about that. Yeah, but that would be true, too, of them. Like, very recreational, right?
Yep.
And a lot of fresh food,
surfer
fish.
vibes. I always think anywhere where it's warm and tropical,
Yeah. Makes sense.
you're probably going to be outside more. So
Yeah.
I want to say Iowa's like
think of that.
35, 40.
Yeah, I think
not
that's
quite
right.
40, but like we have long winters. I think people fluctuate. So you've made it through the lightning round. Congratulations.
I don't know if I passed or not,
Pass
but-
the gauntlet here.
Okay.
Another piece I wanted to touch on, I know you're really big into working with women, female
Yeah.
empowerment, kind of all the thing, women being strong, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I know, especially, and you probably had this when you started, but the strength training side, what do you think is the biggest reason why women are resistant to try weight training or get into a fitness routine that's just not being on the treadmill?
Yeah, I don't want to sound too redundant with all the fitness influencers out there, but honestly, like I've had women look me straight in the eye and be like, I would like to strength train with you. I just don't want to look like you. And I think
And you're like, wow, thanks.
I've come to realize that I think behind that statement is like, I don't want to get bulky is what you hear, right? So women are concerned about that. What they don't realize is to put on the skeletal muscle that I've been able to put on has taken over a decade of consistent weight training, progressive weight training, like for a very long period of time, along conducive with a healthy diet with a lot of protein. So I try not to take offense to that too much anymore. But I think there is that concern of like overdoing it, if you will, which is wild because vastly underdone, especially with females and lifting heavy weights. Now with perimenopause and menopause like coming into the conversation finally, like this has been happening forever for women, but like now people are actually talking about it. We know the benefits of lifting heavy weight like further in life as far as building that skeletal muscle mass and osteoporosis and the onset of menopause for women and what that does to our body. So I am starting to win the war with women on like, I don't want to be bulky. And they're like, I need to lift heavy because that person said it on Instagram or TikTok. And it's true. So I think that battle is getting a little bit easier for me to have with women. And I think the other thing is like, I don't want to get hurt, which is valid because when you do lift heavy enough, like you can lift to failure. And when you're not confident in what you're doing, that's where a personal trainer can come in and really be the guidance for like, you can do 2 more, I'm right next to you kind of a thing. So
Sure.
yeah, I think those are my biggest ones.
No, that's great. I think it's a big piece because I've been working out since I was like 14, so over almost 20 years. Like what the heck? That's a long time. But yeah, it's I think it's coming around because people see, like you said, I'll see like a female bodybuilder or a woman that's taking male growth hormone or testosterone. I'm going to look like that. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like they're living the lifestyle for a decade. They eat that certain way and they're supplementing with steroids. Like that's not going to, you're not doing any of those things. Like you're, but I think having just being stronger helps with everything. Like your posture's better. I know before I started lifting weights, I was duck footed and then my posture straightened up. My back was straighter. My feet are straight now. It's just the really weird, like collateral benefits of just like having the ability to like pick something up.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
And I think as women, like that posture thing. So I was in full sweats, kind of like I am now at the grocery store one time. And a man came up to me and he's like, you lift a lot of weights, don't you? And I looked down and I was like, how does he know that? Because usually it's like the bumps on my shoulders or like veins on my arms. People will comment. And he goes, it's how you walk. Like, I can tell that you lift a lot of weight by how you walk. So what we meant was, like, my posture, right? And you don't see a lot of women with, like, their shoulders back and, like, having that confident posture. So that's one of the biggest things I love to see is when women start initially lifting weights and then they walk into my gym and I'm like, yeah. Like, you feel good in your body and you feel confident because you can pick up heavy weights and your posture is literally better.
Sure. And then it just bleeds into every other part of your life. Like, you're got an important work meeting or something, or you're going on a hot date. You know, you're going to wear that spicy dress or something there where you wouldn't before, you know.
Yeah, it's total confidence. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it.
Me too.
So we talk about kind of the community versus the customer list, like the how do you build a community, not just a customer list compared to that type of thing. What are some of those things? I mean, you mentioned like the personal tie-ins, but how are you forging those relationships with people early? So then they, like you said, when you're getting an Uber and the driver's telling you about their wife that left them and and you're like, I've only known you for 2 minutes, dude. Chill out. Like, you're just way too comfortable. How do you get people to lower their walls around you and be comfortable enough to build that relationship?
I don't know what it is, dude, but I don't have to try very hard. I don't know if it's just my face or like the fact I'm 5'4" and a female. I don't know what it is, but people just feel very confident to do it off the bat. But in the rare instance where that's not the case, I know that I have to in turn be vulnerable and just be kind of quiet, if you will, and just be a really good listener. I had a man say to me one time in a CrossFit class, he goes, how come you always let me finish what I'm going to say even though you know it's really dumb? Because he's like, I'm going to ask you a question and I know it's kind of dumb, but you always let me get to the end. And I was like, well, usually if I'm quiet and listen to you enough, you've come to the conclusion yourself, and then I don't really have to say much. But I've learned to just be a really good listener, if you will, just like ask the question and then just be quiet. People aren't really comfortable in silent spaces either, so they tend to fill it with words. And then I just kind of get to know people in that way. But just kind of allowing them to share themselves with me and just have the space to do that and feel comfortable doing it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it also, just as a third party scene, it helps if you're just authentic from the get.
Yeah.
I think you being just yourself and not trying to put out something that you think people want to see makes you immediately draw in people that just want to share who they are with you. Because you meet a lot of these people that are putting on a fake face, or they're doing whatever, they're wearing clothes to try to look a certain way or say things a certain way. You can see through that crap really quickly, where like, if somebody meets you, they'll know probably in the first 5 minutes you're probably going to talk about your family because that's important, or your faith, or fitness, or whatever. It's like the things that matter to you, then you're like, oh, Amy's being real with me, I should be real with her, you know?
I've had to be real purposeful with that too, like, and not putting my workouts at the forefront of Instagram, for example, or like putting, pictures of me with just a sports bra, whatever it happens to be. Like, to me, that's a turnoff to people too. Like, that's not authentically who I am. That's just trying to pull numbers in on social media. So yeah, I think that's a big piece of it too.
Sure, that's great. Yeah. I think it's something that people can take even if they're in a different industry. It's like, if you're in a transactional business, how can you make this one step more intimate or connected driven?
Absolutely.
Where if people just come to you for price, like, how can we make it just a little bit more like, because even in your case, when you left the gym, it's like, yes, that's a transactional decision, career move, whatever, but it's like you're in the fabric of that community and you have to remove yourself from it, and that's hard.
Yeah.
And it cements people in with the service, but with your experience, with everything. But also it makes it so you're more invaluable. It's like harder to leave a gym when you're tied into the fabric, or when you're trying to recruit people. It's like other trainers or whatever. It's like, look how committed this group is. Like, those things I think pay dividends down the road.
Big time.
That's great.
Yeah.
We talked about this membership offering. Tell me about this online thing. That's kind of what we most recently talked about, because I was talking with you about how to monetize this group. So tell the people about, like, what is this online membership and what are you aiming to build out of it?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about how to create some sort of online platform, if you will, as like a downsell. So, I'm capped out with clientele. Also, personal training can start to get a little bougie as far as pricing goes. So for people that can't afford me but want access to me, how can I do that? So we started a circle group. And within that, I was doing like live talks with dietitians. I interviewed a pelvic floor specialist, and just trying to get memberships kind of up in there so that people could start communicating with each other about fitness-related topics, that I would start threads that we would start. And it's been a slow go, if you will. But also, I think part of that's me. I think being 44 and technology not being my jam, there's a little learning curve to it. But also, like, again, I want that authentic piece of me to come through. And I always want to do a really good job at everything that I do. I don't do a good job of doing things halfway. So I want to make sure that I'm buying into it completely and also that I'm giving it all the attention it deserves while also having 28 clients. So the online platform that will work best for me is the one that's going to be something that doesn't have a lot of touch points, that a lot of community vibe is happening, but that also to me feels like I can still be authentic and give it like my very best effort. So I'm still kind of clunking through that a little bit and figuring that out. I know I have the potential if I wanted to kind of through the online platform, but the hesitation there is it's just not very personal.
Sure.
Right?
No, I think it's great. It's great insight as well because even for like if you're like you said, if your personal training clients decline, you have this thing that you can promote or sell or whatever, and
that's right.
You could do the same amount of input and make 10 times the amount of money or a tenth of the money, and it's the same amount of input, which is nice. So you're not trading time for money, which I think is great. So
I think so too. So I'm still trying to clunk through that a little bit, but you were the one that really brought to light everything I was thinking. Like here's personal training, it's booming. But then what's underneath that? That's structuring that like in a way that points to personal training, but also is a downsell. So
sure. No, I love it.
Still learning.
Yeah, well, I think it's kudos to you for getting out there because so many people would be like, "This is a foreign topic to me," or "I'm not like you said, tech's not my thing. I'm just going to stick with what I know." But I think just diversifying your knowledge base to understand, like again, like we talked about with Jarrett, they went and looked at all these other business models, like. A lot of people teach or give people a way to work out, but what can I learn from each one or tweak it to make it so my offer is really appealing or helps the most people or whatever? You can kind of change things up with what works. So that's
exactly.
really cool.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to touch on too before we close out was you mentioned parenting being a big part of your life and one of the hardest challenges for you mentally and as you've grown these children up and whatnot. What's been the comparison for you between parenting versus coaching? What have you learned as a parent that you've applied as a coach and vice versa?
Patience is a big one. So people don't always do the right thing, whether it's your teenager, whether it's somebody in class, and whether it's intentional or unintentional. But you have to have a lot of tools within your belt to get people to do the right thing, whether it's pick up the barbell correctly or is whether to get your kid out the door on time for high school, and leave on time. And having those different tools for those different moments is really important so that you can pivot, right? Like, oh, this isn't working, so I need to try something else. And that takes a lot of patience. Like, you have to be able to not react emotionally when you've said the same thing 7 different times, 7 different ways, and it's still not ringing through. And so I've learned through coaching my kids and through coaching people, like, you just have to be patient and keep having those tools. And I think that's where a personal trainer that's been around for over a decade is a really, really good resource for people to look for because that person's built a really big tool belt. It's kind of like a mom who's been through the ringer with like 4 or 5 kids and they're all grown up. Like, there's some wisdom in that, and they know how to reach people on multiple levels and get them to do things that maybe they aren't even realizing they're doing wrong. If that makes sense.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I think it is. It's an interesting because you're educating and mentoring and kind of facilitating, but it's very different when it's your own children versus random people that walk into a gym. So.
Yeah, and I think there's also just like the vulnerability piece as a coach. I mean, there were so many times when I started coaching and personal training, I was like, oh, I don't know what's next. Hold on, I got to look. Or I screwed up the clock. I'm so sorry. And that piece of it with my kids has been important too, to model to them, like, I'm not the all-out authority on everything all the time because I'm going to make mistakes sometimes. And I'm really sorry. I need to be transparent when that happens. I need to be vulnerable. We need to work through that together so that your expectation isn't always that mom's perfect. Everything she says is 100%. But also then for them to model that back to me and be like, hey, I goofed up, mom. Like, we need to talk about it. So modeling both ways. And then as a coach, just being like, hey, sorry, guys. Today's just not my day,
Sure. No, I love it.
Being authentic too.
Yeah, I think that's a good point for sure. Kind of tying it all together. I mean, you said you're 5 months into the business now, so not even half a year. I mean, it'll be by the end of this year, but exciting stuff. What advice did you have for other people that are like middle-aged starting a business? I think that'd be a unique perspective to kind of close out. What advice did you have for that person that's in a job that they have this business idea in the back of their head, but they have all these doubts or things that they're like limiting self-belief? Like, what advice did you have for that person about pursuing their business based on what you've learned in the last 5 months?
Yeah, I think being older gives you a voice and intuition. I call it the Holy Spirit, but some people call it intuition, whatever you call it. But I think tapping into that later in life is a pretty good resource for people. And it's one that we tend to poo-poo because, in your 20s and your 30s, maybe that voice isn't so clear or so loud, but you've lived enough of a life. Like that voice that comes from inside is speaking pretty loudly. You should probably listen to it. So that's a part that I probably waited too long on and that I should have listened to a little sooner. But also just like tapping into your resources. Like I'm 44, I built a pretty good network at this point in time. So talking to other people that ran their own business, talking to other people about what do you see about me that is a good business owner, how can you help? So seeking out people that are doing it already is something you can do kind of later in life because you've develop those skills. You've got those within you, or if you don't, like you've got the maturity behind you to dig in and be able to do that pretty well. So I think I had maturity on my side. I had an inner voice that was speaking pretty loudly, and then I had a lot of people around me that were doing a good job of what they were doing that kind of led by example for me too.
Sure. No, yeah. I love it. Well, Amy, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
Where can people learn more about you? I know you have a newsletter and a blog. Where can people maybe plug into you and learn as much as they can about kind of all the stuff you're putting out there?
Yeah, probably the easiest way. I have an Instagram page. I have a Facebook page. So those are just BA Fitness, or my handles on both of those. Those link right to my website, which is not an easy website. Maybe I need to work on that to recite, but they're linked within my Instagram and my Facebook pages. And then my blog comes out weekly through that. I post it on my pages as well. So
very good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. If you guys have made it this far, make sure to go check out her stuff. We'll put it in the description box below. Also, make sure if you're listening or watching on YouTube or Spotify to subscribe. It makes a huge difference, and give us a 5-star rating if you're listening on iTunes. And check out all the social media clips on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. So until next week's episode, my name is Ryan Snod, and it rhymes with odd, and you're listening to the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Peace. Thank you so much for watching yet another episode of the Rhymes with Odd podcast. We really do appreciate your support. If you could give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, that makes a world of difference, guys. Also, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and check us out on social media. Also, if you'd like to inquire more about our services here at Snod Media Group or learn about doing your own podcast for your own business, you can find us at snodmedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.